In 2035, the Ares 3 manned mission crew to Mars is on Sol 18 of their 31 Sol expedition on the surface. Commander Lewis is leading the mission with Beth Johansson, Rick Martinez, Mark Watney, Chris, and Beck. The crew notices a sandstorm rising toward their base. They get inside the hab and Lewis sees that the storm is 1,200 kilometers in diameter, and tracking right toward them. The storm has 8,600 Newton force, while they can abort the mission at 7,500 Newton force. The crew decides not to abort the mission. Lewis says by that force everything will be destroyed and orders them to abort the mission. Lewis orders Rick to prep the launch and asks others to follow the signal to reach the MOV. The storm gets heavy and they can't see anything except the signals. Suddenly, Mark Watney is struck off by flying debris and is lost in the storm. Lewis wants to find him but his signal is lost and Rick tells her they've to leave. Lewis still wants to find him but Rick tells her their launch vehicle is on the verge. Lewis gives the order to launch without retrieving him. They subsequently leave Mars aboard the Hermes. The crew then leaves the Mars orbit and heads back to Earth. While on Earth, NASA's director Teddy Sanders announced on the media that they aborted the mission Ares 3. He confirms Mark's death while the other astronauts are coming back to the Earth. Back at the Mars, Mark is alive but is wounded and his suit is also damaged. The antenna's wire penetrated his stomach. He cuts the wire and makes his way to the hab. Reaching inside, he cleans his wound and stitches it. At night, Mark records a video message that he's alive and it's day 19th on Mars. He has no way to contact NASA and even if he could, it's gonna take 4 years to reach a rescue mission. The hab will explode after 31 days. The time passes and one day Mark decides not to die here. On day 21, he counts the remaining food and finds some potatoes. Mark records another video saying that he can survive 400 Sol with this food. Mark is a botanist so he decides to grow vegetables inside the hab. He uses the waste and puts the soil inside the hab. He uses the waste and crop potatoes in it. 36 Sol passed and now there is a water problem for him. He uses hydrogen and mixes it with oxygen to make water. He burns the hydrogen but a blast occurs. It happened because the oxygen was high due to the oxygen that came out of his mouth. This time he uses his helmet and manages to make water. Now 54 Sol have been passed and crop has started to grow. On Earth, NASA holds Mark's funeral and Teddy gives a speech on his bravery because they still don't know he's alive. Vincent, NASA's chief, asks Teddy to use a satellite to have a look at Mars. Teddy says we've to send an Ares 4 supply mission but Vincent says after we find supplies on Mars we can send a probe to collect that. Teddy tells him that the public organization is keeping an eye on us and after Mark's death, they will not allow to send another mission. Vincent argues to find Mark's dead body but Teddy says no mission is going to Mars before Ares 4. Vincent calls Mindy to rotate the satellite toward Hab to see the view. Mindy rotates it and is shocked to see the movements on Mars's surface. She urgently calls Vincent and Teddy to check the images. Vincent, Teddy, and Annie arrive and Vincent tells them solar panels are clean and the rover is also moved near the Hab for charging. This indicates that Mark is still alive but he has no source to contact NASA. 70 Sol passed on Mars and Mark is trying to figure out the location of Ares 4 which is supposed to land at Schiaparelli crater. This crater is 3,200 km away from his location. He has 2 rovers but each can travel 35 miles and this journey can take 50 days to complete. Mark doubles the rover's battery by scavenging rover 1 and continues his traveling. He stops at the unknown place where he's freezing with the cold. Turning on the heater will reduce the battery life but he doesn't have much option and turns it on to save himself from cold. The next day, he finds a radioisotope generator which will produce some heat. Vincent says at the press conference that Mark is alive and that NASA is going to send a mission to rescue him. Teddy becomes angry at Vincent's nonsense and gives Mindy full control over the satellite to see Mark's movements. Teddy then talks with Bruce, the probe's engineer, and gives him 3 months to build a probe so they can send supply. Flight director Mitch asks Teddy to inform the remaining crew about Mark. Teddy refuses to do so saying they are 10 months away from Earth and he doesn't want any kind of trouble. He says as we make a rescue plan to save Mark, we'll inform them. Mark reaps his crop which produces 400 potatoes. After that, he found the location of the Pathfinder probe, which went silent in 1997. This will help him to restore communication with Earth and he sets out for the search. While seeing his movements, Vincent also finds that Mark is going to retrieve the Pathfinder. Vincent reaches California to meet the 1997 crew. Mark arrived at the location and found the probe. Arriving back at the base, Mark activates the Pathfinder while Vincent also activates it to make the communication. Mark uses the whiteboard to send them a picture "Are you receiving my signal, yes or no?" writing on it. The team becomes happy to see this and they rotate the probe's camera to tell him yes. After this, Mark uses numbers to communicate on Earth to gain access to a computer so they can talk by typing SMS. Vincent sends him a message they are sending a supply probe before Ares 4, which will take 9 months. Mitch again argues with Teddy and agrees to inform the crew about Mark. In Hermes' spaceship, we see the remaining crew, which is 6 months away from the Earth. Lewis and the whole crew watch Mitch's message in which he tells them about Mark. Lewis feels disgusted that she left him there to die. As Mark continues to connect with NASA, Mitch and Bruce formulate a plan to send a space probe to Mars. They inform Mark to survive 800 Sol with the remaining food while he has food for 900 Sol. As the probe's launch date approaches, another blast occurs in the hab which destroys his crops. Now he only has a supply of 600 Sol, and Teddy gives Bruce a 3-month ultimatum to build the probe. With no other way to launch the supply probe on time, Teddy decides to skip safety inspections. 3 months later, they launch the probe without inspection, resulting the probe exploding shortly after liftoff. Hearing the news of this disaster, Mark loses little hope and sends a message to his crew. He asks Lewis to meet his parents to tell them that their son was a hero. Teddy calls the Chinese Space Agency to use their Taiyang probe. They decide to help NASA, which will be to their benefit, and they call Teddy to use it. An aerodynamics engineer, Rich Purnell, calculates his data and goes to talk to Teddy. He suggests they can use Hermes' spaceship, which is 1 month away from Earth. Rich tells them if they increase its speed and use a Chinese probe to send supplies for the spaceship crew when it comes near the Earth orbit. Rich says that by doing this, they can save Mark and return to Earth in 6 months, but there is enough sustenance. Teddy doesn't want to do this, saying he can't put 5 astronauts in danger for saving 1. Mitch says to leave this on his crew because they don't have another way to save Mark. The reach is to Lewis and her team, and they decide to take a risk to save their partner. After 459 sols, Mark leaves the hab, beginning a 3,200 kilometers, 90 Sol journey to Schiaparelli crater using solar panels from his hub powering his rover. Bruce makes another probe and tells Teddy that if you want Mark to reach the speed in 52 minutes, they need to make some modifications. Because the crew does not have enough fuel to land on Mars. They need to reduce its mass, removing non-essential equipment and even the vessel's windows and exterior panels. To intercept, Hermes must use its maneuvering thrusters to change course, and explosive decompression of its internal atmosphere to adjust its speed. 538 Sol and NASA managed to land their probe in Ares 4 crater. After reaching it, Mark removes all of its stuff to reduce its mass. With Mark on board the gutted MAV, the Hermes crew launches it remotely. It escapes Mars successfully, but not at the planned speed and distance. To intercept, Hermes must use its maneuvering thrusters to change course, and explosive decompression of its own internal atmosphere to adjust its speed. Lewis uses an MMU to approach Mark's vessel as close as her tether will allow, but is unable to reach him. Mark pierces the glove of his pressure suit and leaves the capsule, using the escaping air as a miniature thruster to reach Lewis. The crew is emotionally reunited, as crowds around the world cheer the news. After returning to Earth, Mark begins day 1 of his new life, serving as a survival instructor for new candidates in the astronaut training program, emphasizing his own experiences in problem solving and creative engineering. Years later, on the occasion of the Ares V mission launch, those involved in Mark's rescue have returned to their lives or begun new lives. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos.